I'm calling the meeting back into order. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee is meeting to discuss committee business. My objective here is to get through this business. I'm going to ask Mr. Januous if you can take your seat. You're subbed in, so would you take your seat up here, please? It just everyone. So my objective here today is just to kind of ratify some of the decisions that were made in the subcommittee, which we will see how long it takes. So the subcommittee met on Wednesday, April 17th and Tuesday, May 30th. And I'd like to report back on our behalf, their behalf, the subcommittee's behalf. Language was confirmed for letter to Mr. David Yao and Nicole Foster. The letter was then shared with the full committee and distributed to recipients. It was agreed that a follow-up letter be sent to David Yao following his written responses. That letter was distributed to Mr. Yao on April 23rd. Letter was proposed by a member, drafted by the analyst, and confirmed in subcommittee for a letter to Microsoft. The draft has been sent to all members of the committee, and it is my desire to send that letter to Microsoft shortly. Is that it? Let me read it first. I will read the letter and then looking for your consent to send this off. Pertaining to your testimony for the, dear sir, I won't. Pertaining to your testimony before the Standing Committee on Public Accounts of 9 April 2024, the committee requests copies of all communication between Microsoft Canada and the Canada Border Services Agency with regard to the ArriveCAN application in general, as well as those pertaining to the bridge between ArriveCAN and the Border Services Officer application based on what you told the committee. Please send this information to the clerk of the committee no later than 21 May 2024. Do I have consent to send this?
Sir, that's to Microsoft, right?
Yes, the official, yes.
Yeah. I'm good. Yep, I like it.
Good, okay. Very good. All right. So I'm going to bring up to speed on the, first of all, this is kind of outstanding, but just in full, for the sake of full disclosure, we have a motion that was passed by the committee for an ArriveCAN committee meeting with KPMG. You'll recall that motion was passed soon after the two original witnesses were in. Now I've added two others for the sake of efficiency that had been set before that, and just in terms of maximizing the committee time. That's two other contractors, Donnacona and Tech Systems. Now, in addition to this, the subcommittee, as we went through, and I think I've reported this back already, the suite of meetings we agreed to. We've agreed to study Report 6, Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, 2030 Emission Reduction Plan. This first one requires no additional witnesses because it's a committee review of an audit from the Office of the Auditor General. So that's on what I'll call autopilot. We're going to look at Report 4, National Trade Corridors Fund. Again, we hear from the principals and the Auditor General, so autopilot, no additional witnesses are needed. Okay, and here we agreed to an additional meeting of Report 2, Housing in First Nations Communities, and the witness list as assembled by the subcommittee was sent out to all members this morning. Do I have your agreement to proceed with that meeting based on those witnesses? I'm seeing yeses, and very good. And then lastly, there was agreement for an ArriveCan meeting, and that list was distributed to members, again, with the makeup as required by the motion in terms of representation. Is that witness list good, and may I proceed with that as well? Yes, Ms. Shanahan.
So now I do have questions as to the number of meetings. So I see that you have Donnacona here on the list, for example, so that's already included?
Yes,
In a meeting.
so there are two ArriveCan meetings that are outstanding. The first one you're referring to, actually, I might have to look at the list you're looking at. So the first one with the contractors was, with KPMG in particular, that was passed by a motion of this committee. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Yes.
And we saw KPMG, and we had.
No,
we had them
that followed that meeting. There was a motion to bring back one individual from KPMG. And so that was a motion from this committee that followed that. And so that's
on this list?
That's set by the committee already. The discussion in the subcommittee really focused around the additional ArriveCan meeting with the witnesses. And let me just go through the list, and I'll let the clerk correct me. We have the Commissioner of the Office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics, the Commissioner of the Office of Public Sector Integrity, an official from CBSA, and then 3 individuals. And so, and that list was made up of suggestions from government members and opposition members.
Okay, and so in the spirit of the motion that we passed regarding the proportionality of witnesses, it looks like, and I seem to remember a previous meeting where, and I don't know who it was because the members have changed, so it might have been Mr. Nader, saying, oh, we have to put a priority now on our witnesses. We have to choose.
So this list is that priority. Now, if you're wondering, well, how come? So I'll take just 1 second. So, Ms. Shanahan, let me be, so for a meeting, the government would have, Liberal members would have 4 witnesses. I'll just hold for a second.
Has just showed me a shorter list, so that prioritization has taken place then?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So
And yes, and so, yes, so, yes. And it was
Okay.
distributed.
Yeah.
Good?
So, Jean, we're good with that. Thank you.
Okay. We're moving right along here. Yes, Mr. Desjardins.
Just looking at the witness list for that, I believe I supplied the CBSA president.
Just hold on. I've got competing lists here. Hold on a second, unless someone can confirm that.
Can I have the other one? We can invite them along.
Yes, that individual will be included as well, Mr.
Thank you very much,
Desjardins.
Mr. Chair.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
So, Chair,
Yes.
just
Yes.
the second question then is how are are we doing a one meeting, 2 panels? Is that
That's
it? Yeah.
that's what I will
Okay,
do.
very
Yes,
good.
the mandate is for a meeting, and that I'm going to work with the clerk on this, but I think I will split it up a little bit to ensure we have kind of a balanced meeting. Okay. All right. So those are all passed and approved. I will remind you all that on Tuesday we have a long outstanding meeting for Public Accounts 2023, and I am expecting the Bank of Canada as well as the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board to be here Tuesday. And Finance. All right. Now I'm going to recognize Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés, s'il vous plaît.
Monsieur le
Mr. Chair, colleagues, following discussions that we've had with respect to witnesses, and I know everyone was present when we discussed this, there is a witness that I consider important in our study of ArriveCan and the RCMP. And I want to be very precise, very specific, very clear on what we're trying to learn and understand. And that is the investigative process. We're all aware of this, and I'll say it once and for that we need precise details on the investigation underway. And what we want to understand is the process around the investigation in a general way in order to understand what the RCMP is doing. That would be my first witness, and I think, and the chair mentioned this at another meeting, that the RCMP, would they be there with members of government or business representatives or Canadian Border Services people? So I will read the text of the motion that shall be sent to you shortly, that the committee invite the RCMP to appear for at least 2 hours in its study on its report on ArriveCan follow. And yes, thank you.
And to you. In the meantime, I'm just going to say a few words. The subcommittee discussed this. I was concerned about. I thought this needed to come back to the committee for a discussion. I did not like the idea of having the RCMP appear with other witnesses. I think that would have been difficult for everyone at the table. So Madame Saint-Clair Desgagnés is doing just that right now. So if you want to have a look at the motion, and then we can discuss it and perhaps resolve this in the next hour or so. So I will begin with Ms. Shanahan and then Mr. Desjardins. And Ms. Desjardins, I understand you have your hand up as well. Thank you. So.
I was just going to ask, are we suspending before we get the, while we get the...
To tell you what, let me just hear a few, and then if there's, I hear where you're coming from, but let me just I want to hear a few comments first. So, Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I agree with the motion. My only concern and potential concern was the one you shared during the subcommittee in relation to the potential that the RCMP may not be able to answer all questions during a pending investigation. In that case, we would not want to prejudice the investigation. So can we find an option to either confirm with the RCMP that there may be questions that are out of scope for them to answer in advance of this meeting so that we don't have redundancy?
So what are you proposing? Are you suggesting we do accept answers that, or are you proposing we go in camera at a point in the meeting, or just or what's your question for the?
I want to be able to protect the integrity of the investigation while also being able to ask the RCMP important and credible questions about ArriveCan.
Sure.
Without compromising any potential investigation.
Okay. Just avant ça, Mr. Genuis, do you have any comments you want to make? I see, and then I've got Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Yeah, just briefly say we support the motion. In listening to it, I don't know that it mentioned the amount of time. I think it would be important for is 2 hours in the motion? Okay, fantastic. We're good to go.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés.
Sur ce point, ce qui avait été discuté, et je pense que
Now, after what we discussed, Mr. Chair, you've made a point. I think that at any time, the chair can ask the RCMP if it has information it would prefer to share in camera. Now, this doesn't have to be part of the motion, but if it prefers to present information in camera, I would like to know what you have to say about that.
Yeah, I like the way that Madame Sinclair Desgagnés, excusez-moi, Desgagnés, a quand même expliqué la motion dans le sens.
I like the way she explained the motion because it helps to better understand the process of the RCMP. And for something like that, this testimony could be somewhat like what we had with the what the foundation we had for audits and accountability. Now, it might be something that very well should be in camera in order that members might be able to ask the questions they want. From an educational point of view, I would see perhaps an hour in public and another in camera. Well, if I take it, Ms. Shanahan, you're saying an hour in public. Well, I don't know, because I have a lot of questions to ask the RCMP about the process. This is why I recommended 2 hours. But we might be able to have a compromise and do as we did before. Since this is for information, every member would have the same amount of time to put questions. We would be doing this informally, as we did with the Auditor General.
So just, sorry, Michelle, I was juggling things. You're proposing, are you proposing an hour in total or in public, or what's the?
An hour in public, because the RCMP cannot respond to any questions.
Yeah.
And with all due respect, if we have members that are going to insist on asking them directly, who they're charging, who they've got warrants for, et cetera, then that's risk being prejudicial to the investigation. And I don't think anybody wants that. So if we're going to make it for educational purposes, which I think is valuable, then that would be 1 hour in public. Or it could be 1 hour.
Is that with an additional thought? And I'm actually just asking questions. I don't have a position on this. I'll wait for the committee,
Mm-hmm.
and then an additional hour in public in camera if necessary.
Well, I don't see, especially if we're able to divide up time, more or less equally amongst us, because we're not questioning the witness in order to, it's not as part of our mandate. It's an educational thing. Everyone benefits from the questions that are asked and the answers that are given. Really, it's one or the other. 1 hour in public, or if people prefer 1 hour in camera. But I really see that 1 hour is more than enough.
Very good. I saw Mr. Desjardins first. I'll come to you, Ms. Genuis. Yes.
I think that's maybe a bit too far, to be frank. What I'm trying to suggest is that we should be wary of the potential concern that we could prejudice an investigation. But I also know that our committee's mandate is to gather information. It's the RCMP's job to find guilt. It's our committee's job to second information and evidence. And that's something that I think we do really well. but we have to be certain of that line. There's a place, I think, Mr. Chair, between the calling of a vote to go in camera, where we can, at the time of the meeting and the hearing, discuss that potential under advice of the RCMP. I think if the RCMP suggests to us that there could be a prejudice based on their testimony, then at that time I would suggest the committee entertain a possible motion to go in camera for the purpose of receiving that information. But until such time, I do think that a public meeting for 2 hours for the purpose of transparency to the public is important to this process.
So that's what I was thinking, Mr. Desjardins, not to prejudice the comments, because it gives us flexibility, and it gives the chair flexibility to hear an appropriate amount in public and then shift gears if necessary. Mr. Genuis.
Yeah, Chair, I hope we're moving towards a consensus. So just a couple quick points. I agree with what Mr. Desjardins is saying in terms of the time distribution. Let's have them here in public, and let's see how things unfold, and the proportions may be different in terms of what's proposed. Maybe it does make sense to have a portion of public, a portion of in camera, but let's start in public. Let's ask the questions we can, and let's see where we are. Just in terms of questions and what they can or cannot answer, I think it should be very clear that the RCMP will know exactly what questions they can and can't answer, and both things are true, that committees have a right to demand information when they choose to, but that committees can and should be reasonable in their exercise of that power. And so if RCMP officials are earnestly telling us they're not able to answer certain questions, I think the committee will be reasonable in response to that. So I don't think, though, we need to be the ones deciding what they can and cannot answer. I think they will be able to tell us, and we can ask the questions, whatever questions, and they will respond to them in a way that's appropriate with their professionalism and their mandate. So I think the motion works as is, and things will unfold in a proper way.
Yes, Ms. Shanahan.
I'd like to understand better what we're looking for from the RCMP, Madame Sinclair de Gagné. Est-ce que c'est vraiment à titre d'information? Donc,
Would this be for information purposes? So what would the process be? It would be like a beginner's course. In other words, we will mention names. We won't ask about them to discuss a given case. No names. No specific situations. Because there are members who are experienced lawyers. And I'm certain that that is not the objective. We don't have we're not doing this with a view to harming anything or anyone. Thank you, Ms. Shanahan. Well, if I can answer my colleague, well, yes, our objective is that we want information. I agree with what Mr. Genuis said, and also with what Mr. Desjardins said. Now, we know, we all agree, that someone could take advantage of the situation to ask a specific question, but that would be, but the RCMP could simply say that they can't answer. I think everyone here is aware of not wanting to waste time on this. So there would be questions, perhaps a process. And because at this time, we're hearing a lot about with respect to ArriveCan, about the fact that we cannot discuss certain aspects because they're the subjects of RCMP investigations. So I think the RCMP knows what is part of an investigation. So there would be boundaries. Right now, there's, a taboo with respect to taboo because the RCMP is looking into it. Yes, the RCMP is looking at it within the parameters of its scope, but we can still ask questions about what's happened with ArriveCan.
No, oh no, c'est Madame Yip avant. Oui, go ahead, Ms. Yip.
Okay. So you're proposing 2 hours then, and it would just be like a regular session? Then we should just do the regular rotations then?
With
that
one
right?
exception, which is the carve out for a possible in camera if the committee feels that should happen. But otherwise, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Like every other witness
With
coming?
rounds, yes.
Okay, with the rounds and so forth. All right.
Thank you. Madame Shanahan, oui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, donc je pense que
Well, I think that the way the motion is drafted, you could ask members of the RCMP to appear before us to talk about ArriveCan, but really we want them for informational purposes. And this is why we're inviting the RCMP for at least 2 hours within the context of, or rather, in order to explain to the committee its procedures with respect to an investigation of something like ArriveCan.
Suivant, oui, ça va, oui, Madame Sinclair Desgagnés.
Well, the answer is simple. In every motion, we identify the study that is now underway before the committee. We're not saying it's a new study. It's within the context of what we're looking at with ArriveCan. So we won't be asking specific questions about an investigation underway because the RCMP can't answer in any case. But it still has to do with ArriveCan and our ArriveCan study. So we will have questions to put to the RCMP, and these questions will have to do with ArriveCan. So we need this in a motion. If I hadn't done it, they would have said, you would have come back to me and said, it isn't part of our work. So it can be part of our report on the Auditor General, Ms. Shanahan. Well, I agree that this could be within our study. It could be part of our study. I don't want to see us questioning the RCMP based on testimony we've heard about ArriveCan. Do you think that such and such a thing was said by someone? What do you think of that? What do you think of this or that matter? I'm sort of improvising here, but within the context of our study of ArriveCan, we could ask the RCMP to appear before us in order to explain its procedures in the context of an investigation, something like that. Yes? Yes, in conclusion, Ms. Sinclair Desgagnés, I think I'm clear on the intentions of various members. I think we can trust the RCMP to know what it should or should not say. So I think the motion is simple and direct, and I think we should go to a vote. Thank you.
Could you call the roll call, please, Clerk?
Just 1 second.
Oh, yes, just,
I gotta make sure I've got the names right.
yes, no.
Shall the motion of Madame Saint-Clair de Gagné carry? Ms. Bradford?
Oui.
Mr. Fillmore? Ms. Diab? Ms. Shanahan?
Oui.
Ms. Yip?
Oui.
Mr. Kurek?
Yes.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes.
Madame Saint-Clair de Gagné?
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
10 yeas.
That motion is passed, and we will
Chair.
endeavor to, just one second, Mr. Keurig, I will work with the clerk to set that up as per the parameters that were passed in the motion that I heard today with respect to in-camera portion as well. Yes, Mr. Keurig.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the opportunity to be here at the Public Accounts Committee this fine Thursday afternoon. Chair, there is a very important motion that I'm going to move here in just a moment. Just to highlight how important accountability is. And we have seen unprecedented, according to some reporting that La Presse has done, the extreme challenges associated with Arrive scam, it appears, are not isolated. La Presse has revealed that there are up to 30 instances where employees of the federal government could very well be double dipping, of which many of those instances seem to be those individuals are in conflict of interest, and it is quite astounding. So, Chair, I'm going to move a motion, and then I would like to reserve, if I could, the right to speak just very, very briefly on that.
Just want to interrupt. Normally I do it the other way, the motion first, then speak to it, but is this a new motion or is this a motion that's already been and you'll get to it, so go ahead. But if you can get to the motion right away, please. Yeah, thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Chair. I know every chair does it just a little bit differently, so I appreciate that. So I would move the motion that is as follows, and I believe it has been sent to the clerk as well for distribution in both of Canada's official languages. That in relation to the committee's ongoing work on government contracting, and further to the information provided by the Treasury Board Secretariat on April 12, 2024, the committee order A, the production of copies of the 140 conflict of interest declarations filed in the 2022-23 fiscal year and the 162 conflict of interest declarations filed in the 2023-24 fiscal year concerning public servants employed in the core public administration who were involved in contractual relationships with the Government of Canada. And B, the production of copies of any conflict of interest declarations filed in the 2022-23 and 2023-24 fiscal years by persons employed by the federal government, including Crown corporations, but outside of the core public administration, who were involved in contractual relationships with the Government of Canada, and C, the production of records which detail all payments made in respect of contractual relationships disclosed in the declarations referred to in paragraphs A and B, provided that D, the names and contact information of the public servants may be redacted. E, for greater certainty, no redactions shall be applied to the names of contracting entities or the value of the contractual relationship disclosed, including where multiple relationships are disclosed, the value of each contractual relationship disclosed, and F, these documents with only the redactions authorized by paragraph D shall be deposited with the clerk of the committee in both official languages by I, in the case of the documents referred to in paragraphs A and B, within 21 days of the adoption of this order, and 2, in the case of documents referred to in paragraph C, within 35 days of the adoption of this order. And Chair, if I could reserve the right to speak to it, I'll allow the opportunity for that to be distributed.
So speak to it first, and then I'm going to get into the mechanism. So, and relatively briefly, I can come back to you again.
Chair, I'll be very brief. And while this motion is very technical, I think that it speaks to a very simple fact. Accountability is needed. We have an egregious example of where a public service servant was double dipping when it comes to Dalian, and we are seeing just this troubling trend come about where it appears that there could be, and according to the reporting in La Presse, that around 30 federal employees, while they were paid by the government, so that's these salaried employees, to test an artificial application designed by a private firm belonging to a senior federal executive in order to assess whether it was possible to use this technology to resolve problems with Phoenix. And
Just point of order.
we see.
Just 1 second, Mr. Keurig.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we're seeing that it is the exact same motion as Mr. Nader. So are you going to speak to that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
just wrap up. I can come back to you, but you just wrap up.
Perfect. Moving the motion that Mr. Nader had brought forward, yes. And so we have this egregious examples where there's government contractors that are government employees rather that are moonlighting as contractors. It's seen that there are 38% could be in conflict of interest. We want to know what those conflicts are. Chair, I think that it's a very simple request. While technical, it gets to the heart of what Canadians are simply demanding answers for.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
So this motion was previously under consideration by the committee. Therefore, Mr. Keurig, from you, I'd like a motion to resume debate on the motion. I will ask the clerk if I have the words correct. This is a dilatory motion, which means you moving it will we'll have a vote on that right away, and we'll either take it up now or
moved.
yes. So, did I get that right, clerk? Do you need to say anything, or should I call the vote? So, the vote before us right now is to resume debate on this motion. This is not to pass the motion; it is just to pick up the debate on a motion that we'd previously studied, tabled by. Or proposed by Mr. Nader on April 25th. So, clerk, could you call, and it's not debatable, clerk, could you call the roll call, please, to resume debate on this motion?
Ms. Bradford.
Me.
Mr. Fillmore.
Yes.
Ms. Diab. Ms. Shanahan.
Yes.
Ms. Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Kurek.
Yes.
Mr. Ellis.
Yes.
Mr. Macaulay.
Yes.
Madame Sinclair Desgagnés.
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins.
Yes.
Sorry. That is 9 yeas, 1 nay.
We will continue debate. Mr. Keurig, I promise you the floor, and over to you, and then I'll look for other speakers.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I think I made it pretty clear in my preamble that answers are needed. We see increasingly, and in my regular committee assignment, which is the Access to Information, Privacy, and Ethics Committee, we see that there is a troubling trend where ethics, the use of public dollars, is there seems to be no end to how those things are being abused. And Chair, I would suggest that the way that this motion is written, it's very specific. We simply need to ensure that where there was this, what very well could be double dipping, if you have employees that are working in a department and moonlighting as contractors that are getting contracts by that department, I don't think that there would be, I would certainly hope that no one around this table would suggest that that's a good idea or responsible use of public dollars. Nor would Canadians. And I would suggest to the Canadians watching that if that is in fact the case, that there is a serious challenge with the way that public dollars are being administered, both in terms of employees and what the rules and regulations around what they are allowed to do, and certainly when it comes to contracts and procurement. So, Chair, I will leave it at that. I'm hopeful that we can have support. The specifics of this motion, it's very direct. We, of course, want to respect privacy of those individuals, but if a federal employee has a company that is engaged in a contract with the federal government, as it specifically says in this motion, that certainly needs to be public, and of course the dollars associated with that. So, Chair, I hope that common sense will prevail. I hope that we can produce these documents so that this committee and my very capable colleagues that sit as regular members of this committee are able to provide that transparency, I think, that Canadians demand, and certainly that Canadians deserve, and what Conservatives are working so hard diligently each and every day to provide.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Keurig. Ms. Shanahan, you have the floor.
Yeah, Chair, I would like to just clarify first. So we're resuming debate. It's on the motion of Mr. Nader then. Yeah. And it is the exact same. So we had a copy of that, so we can disregard whatever came afterwards.
It was identical. I was following it as you read.
Exactly. Yeah, I was following along for a while, and then just trying to pick that up. So as I often argue here when it comes to asking for the production of copies of numerous documents, we don't know exactly what that looks like. Is it a summary sheet like this? Is it a pile like that? We don't know how they're filed, how they're kept, how they're and this is where in this committee it is appreciated when we can talk about motions beforehand. We've done that in the past, and we can come to ground on what should be a common purpose here, which is the transparency and looking to better serve the Canadian public. So they would have to be translated, these documents. And again, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if Mr. Keurig knows what that looks like. We don't have Mr. Nader here, so I don't know if he was able to make some determination on that as well. We certainly didn't look at it on our side, since we didn't think we were dealing with this. So yeah, the number of documents and so on that we have to deal with, I think what I'm just looking for, and just looking at colleagues, is a change in the number of days. I think if we look at F1, to change the 21 days there to 60 days, and in F2 to change the 35 to 60 days. And I think that just gives the public service a little bit more time. And given our experience with days being moved around and so on, I can suggest some more formal wording being, so I move the amendment that we removal of 1 and 2 be replaced with
this is F1 and 2? Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. Removal.
Okay, just the days within 60 days of the adoption of this order. So strike 21.
Okay.
and replaced by 60.
All right, so an amendment to the motion to replace 21 with 60. We are now debating that. Any speakers that you were, okay, Mr. McCall, you were actually on the list, so I'll come to you next, Mr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I am completely opposed to this amendment. We are looking for 140 conflict of interest declarations that are already on file. We know the names. We know where the files are. Most of them are probably already in English and French, but if they're not, it's only 140. And there's 162 filed in 23-24. It's hardly a large amount. We've got a very, very capable public service that I'm sure can get these to us in a day, much less at a time period the Liberals are offering, which, funny enough, takes us into summer when we actually can't get to them. There's been a great cloud of distrust placed over large segments of the public service because of this ongoing issue that started with the ArriveCAN and then has spread into this double dipping. Like one of the gentlemen, and this is why we need to get to this, like one of the gentlemen, the Dalian chap, like he came to the operations committee, made the front page of the Globe and Mail, and yet not a single person in this government sat there and thought, holy cow, Mr. Yao, you look just like this guy in the Globe and Mail that's under investigation with the same name. We've been working side by side for 20 years. Oh, must not be him. We've had ministers somehow unaware that this has been going on, department after department. I'm hoping this is not a systemic issue, but I think we need to put it together or put it behind us fast and get answers fast so we can move on. I think 21 days and 35 days to get less than, which is effectively 302 different documents is nothing considering the size of our public service, considering the competency of our public service. I think we owe it to them to get this cleared so we can put this scandal, for lack of better words, behind us. And I appreciate what Ms. Shanahan does, as she always does, which is tries to delay and push back. But if it was 100,000 documents, 10,000 documents, I could see. But 140 conflict of interest declarations already filled out and filed are not that difficult to find. The fact that the government was able to count 140 means they know exactly where they are and have easy access. I'm sure we could get them by next Monday if we really wanted them. So I am going to suggest we stick with the original 21 days and 35 days, which is extremely reasonable. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. McCall, you don't have to think those thoughts about Ms. Shanahan. I just assumed she wanted to sit in the summer. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor.
No, thank you, Chair. I often strive, I think, particularly in this case, to get unanimous consent for the work we do. And I think that's your goal too, Mr. Chair. We often, in the discussion of the production of documents, come to this discussion of how many documents and how and when. I support this motion in its original language. I also support the proposed amendments by Ms. Shanahan, if that means they'll be voting in favor of the motion. I think it's reasonable, especially for the committee that's investigating something so serious as this, to attempt to find consensus for what often plagues our entire country. Both governments, Conservatives and Liberals, have had massive scandals for a very long time on very similar issues. And New Democrats have been consistent in our approach to wanting to fix this in an earnest way, earnestly. And if we have support by the government to the governing members to investigate this conduct, and there's earnest will by the Conservatives to not make cheap political points out of this, I think we could actually get to a position where these recommendations could be valid. They could come to a point where we maybe even agree on recommendations to finally end this 100 years of insiders benefiting. Like, that's just my thoughts on this, Chair, because it's not like these scandals didn't exist before. You know, we've seen many, many scandals in the previous government under the Conservatives. And we're seeing many, many scandals under this current government. The concern is, this is obviously ongoing. I don't want to see this happen to our public purse anymore. I don't want to see the public service continually being rammed to the ground while insiders and lobbyists get access continuously. And so if there's actually earnest support to get unanimous consent by all parties here today to actually properly investigate this issue and to come to a point where there's recommendations to end this decades and decades long fiasco, like we heard about from Dalian, you know, a donor of the Conservative Party, like this goes on for both sides, guys. It goes on both sides. So if we're really serious about this work, and I really do mean that in a genuine offer, we would come to a point where we would be unanimous in this investigation to actually end it. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Mr. Keurig, you have the floor again.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Chair. Look, I referenced before my regular committee assignment, which is that of the Ethics Committee. And so I'm relatively familiar with what the Ethics Commissioner and his office that does very, very good work. This information is not that complicated. If we were wanting to play politics, we could have said, you know, tomorrow or by Monday or something like that. But no, I think the 21 days and 35 days, I think, is very, very reasonable. These are forms that are filled out that is something that MPs, all of us are relatively familiar with in our roles and obligations under the Conflict of Interest Act. And so I think that the timelines laid out in the motion are very reasonable. And it's my understanding, Chair, that they are, in most cases, already bilingual. So often translation ends up being a bottleneck in terms of especially large document production orders. But it's my understanding that the vast majority of these documents are already bilingual. So therefore, would not have to face that hurdle, which, to Ms. Shanahan's point, can cause delays. That is certainly not a major issue in this regard. So I hope that we can find support. And then I will just share a concern that I have. We see with the Arriva scam scandal that that as the Auditor General and other attempts to get answers on, you know, approximately $60 million project that started off as being something that was only supposed to cost a little bit of money and then just ballooned unbelievably. And we see contracting and procurement and just history being made, first time in a century, somebody being called to the bar, a contractor that had lied to committee, and on and on and on that goes. But forgive me if I'm hesitant to give too much time, because we saw when there was time that lapsed between the contracts being made and the demand for accountability, there were documents that disappeared, and that is not only unprecedented and quite possibly illegal. There is this definitive need to ensure that while being reasonable, and I think we can do that, but Parliament has the right, and I would suggest the moral obligation, to get to the bottom of this stuff. This motion, I think, is very, very reasonable. We have a system in the Conflict of Interest Act that is designed to help mitigate some of these things. And where there have been breaches, where there is information that's needed so that we can look into what could very well be double dipping, Chair, the timelines are reasonable. The request is more than reasonable. We've taken care to ensure that that the names of individuals can be redacted. Again, a very reasonable request, and that way we can get to work on accountability. So I would suggest that it's already more than reasonable as the motion was originally written, and I would encourage the committee to acknowledge that. And I do say that because of my role in the Ethics Committee. This is something that I think we can pass as it was originally written. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Desjardins, you have the floor again.
No, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Listening to our colleagues, I don't think there'll be a consensus or unanimous consent here. It doesn't look like it. I don't see the Conservatives willing to budge on this. And for those purposes, my work in trying to get serious review of this and consideration of this, given to light the consensus offered by the Liberals, is obviously not manageable here today. And for those reasons, I think we'll have to rely on the very good work of our public service for the very short timeframes. And I understand those timeframes are short, and we'll have to just rely on that because of the requirement for the production here. And so for those reasons, I support this motion and would call for a vote.
Thank you. I have to run through the witness list first, or the speaking list first. Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés, vous avez la parole, s'il vous plaît.
Très brièvement, parce que nous appuyons.
Well, briefly, I think if we're to support this motion, we'd have to see some results before the end of this parliamentary session. So I will support the motion as is.
Amendment, please, to 60 days. And just a point of clarification, no, this is very small, but there are two dates, and I believe Ms. Shanahan was for 60 days for both of them. Otherwise, I expect we're going to be doing this again. So I'm for the sake of efficiency. I believe that's what you meant. Anyway, yes. So it's not just to strike the 21 days to 60, but 35 to 60. So it's consistent, and that is I was not clear on that before, but as I was reflecting here. So call the vote, please.
Shall the motion of Ms. Shanahan carry? Ms. Bradford?
Oui.
Mr. Fillmore?
Yes.
Ms. Diab?
That's a yes vote.
Ms. Shanahan? Yes. Ms. Yip?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
No, thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
No.
Mr. Kurek?
No.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés?
Non.
Mr. Desjardins?
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 yeas, 5 nays.
So the motion is the amendment. Pardon me. To the motion is defeated with my vote. We now return to the debate on the motion as written. Yes, Ms. Shanahan.
Chair, I will rely then on the good judgment of the clerk and yourself when it comes to the timely production of documents as requested, that if there's a need for some leeway, that will be accorded. But I understand the will of the committee here as we want to get them as soon as possible. And with that, I call for the vote.
Seeing no other speakers, I will have the clerk call a roll call, please.
Shall the motion of Mr. Nader carry? Ms. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Fillmore?
Yes.
Ms. Diab? Ms. Shanahan?
Yes.
Ms. Yip?
Yes.
Mr. McCauley?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
Yes.
Mr. Kurek?
Yes.
Madame Sinclair-Desgagnés?
Oui.
Mr. Desjardins?
Yes.
10 yeas.
The motion is passed unanimously. Mr. Desjardins, I will say this. Your timing is off. It has not been 100 years. It's more like 150 years if you go back to Johnny MacDonald's CPR scandal. So you've underestimated by a good 50%.
I agree with you, Chair. Corruption been a long time.
We're running. And any other business here? Looking to adjourn? This meeting is adjourned. We'll see you back here Tuesday afternoon. Very good.
Care.